Video 3 in the Packer series. What about Australian resident versus resident of Australia? In the last video, I said I would tell you about these key terms. These terms are crucial if you want to understand how Kerry Packer paid no tax. Australian resident doesn't mean you live in Australia. The Income Tax Assessment Act 1997 describes Australian resident as a person who lives in Australia for legal purposes. To be specific, it's a person who chooses to legally submit to the terms of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936. Anyone can choose to, even if you don't live here physically. It means you're legally opting into the tax system as a taxpayer. What about resident of Australia? What is the difference between resident of Australia and Australian resident, and how do you become one of these? Once you choose to be a resident of Australia for the purposes of the Income Tax Assessment Act 1936, any term in that act applies to you. One of these terms is resident of Australia. Resident of Australia means you live in Australia. The meanings of these terms used in tax legislation are specific to tax legislation. Packer may have been a resident of Australia for immigration purposes because he physically lived in Australia, but he wasn't a resident of Australia for tax purposes. How did Packer avoid being a resident of Australia? Let me tell you how. To be a resident of Australia, you first need to be an Australian resident. If you're not an Australian resident, you can legally evade your liability to tax. If you evade your liability to tax, the Commissioner can't make an assessment of your income tax for the year. No assessment means no tax payable. Kerry Packer paid no tax but avoided penalties by doing it right. Want the full Packer method? Email paynotaxaustralia@gmail.com today. Next, we'll tell you how Packer avoided penalties by doing it right.